So earlier this year, Jocelyn and I were decided to participate in an ayahuasca ceremony. And originally it was going to be 6 people, plus the shaman. And because of COVID, everybody else in the group backed out. And we were the only ones that didn't express that we didn't want to do it. So the shaman invited us to her house down in Colorado. And so we journeyed with our shaman in Colorado earlier this year, and then I felt called to do another ceremony, which turned out to just be for me alone. And it's the intention, the overarching intention that I've carried with me is like a means of self-discovery and to see aspects and parts of myself and what I feel like I'm up against through ayahuasca. So yeah, it's been
Can you articulate your call then? What? Because again, our conversation has been you sort of studying to work on relationships and to develop a credential for relationships.
Yeah.
Is that the same thing?
Like me going to ceremony is to deepen my relationship with myself,
Sure.
as well as my partner.
Okay.
Yeah. Is that what you're asking?
Yeah. I'm just trying to connect with your idea of working and building really a shaman validation. It sounds like you found a shaman, and that shaman is prepared to validate you in some way, and that validation leads to something. It's the something I'm trying to figure out then.
Right. Yeah, this is separate from the relationship school.
Okay.
And I didn't ask her specifically for any sense of validation. And I have walked away from those ceremonies with a sense of validation.
Okay.
Yeah, just I guess a sense of validation of my own personal journey and a deeper or different means of accepting that journey and honoring it. This last ceremony that happened recently, in which I missed class a few weeks ago, I was actually in ceremony the night you guys had class. I think maybe it was the night before. Because it was just me and myself, the shaman was able to spend a lot of time with me one-on-one. And so she also drinks with me and drinks the ayahuasca and kind of enters that altered state of consciousness and then tunes into me. And so with it just being me and her for 4 hours.
Oh my word.
Yeah, maybe more like 5 hours.
Yeah.
As well as the following day, we went for a hike and journeyed with grandfather, which is San Pedro, or it's kind of like the South American version of peyote,
Sure.
The mescaline-based compound. So anyways, pretty much a 2-day ceremony.
Yeah.
It was just so dense. There was so many like insights and messages and different points of view for me to absorb and integrate. It's a lot to just put into words in such, in a short amount of time, respectfully.
Thank you.
So, but
do you get a sense of your future yet?
There's still a lot of unknowns. And what is validated is like me studying religion with you, me going to the relationship school, my endeavors in relationship, and how that's going to look in the future, I don't know.
Interesting. So we're thrilled you're in the right place.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm happy to be here too. And anyways, there's a lot there, and if you ever have any more questions.
Questions? Kate, do you have a question of Ian?
I don't think so. I think that's pretty interesting to hear about. Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thank you.
Thanks for listening.
Oh my. That's well, we were talking shamans that night, and it was just so almost mind blowing to me to realize which journey you're on and realize the integration to what is so interesting for me as an academic, but for you it's personal. Yeah. It's where you're going somehow. Mm-hmm. And my reading right now is Chief Joseph and the Nez Perce. And so I'm just sort of watching and sort of pulling back out. I did a course on Native American spirituality last year before the pandemic, and I didn't know enough on. Again, you learn about things academically, but I still didn't know enough to really have a feel for it, and what they do, which sounds terribly similar to. Is it a Native American shaman that you're actually connected with, or is it from another cultural milieu that the shaman is coming from?
She is American, and she has spent time with the three major tribes that still practice ayahuasca ceremonies down in South America. So, and they're all kind of of the mountains, of the desert, and of the ocean. So there's the Incans, the Incas. I mean, those are all ancient. So I don't know. Are there still people that identify as Mayan and Inca and of those tribes in Northern?
I don't, from having. I've not studied that, so I don't know. Okay. I can't imagine there's not a community though. I mean,
totally.
I know they're there. Yeah. I just don't know where.
Yeah.
And so.
So how obviously these traditions formulated with the ancient civilization.
That's right.
There.
Yeah.
And in some form or another by natives now. Yeah. They're still being held. Yes. And she immersed herself when she was 38, and the message to her was to cultivate ayahuasca outside of South America, and so she moved to Hawaii and started growing ayahuasca and processing it herself, and so on and so forth. So she's 53 now, so almost a 20-year commitment to guiding. Yeah.
Thank you. And what brings you to? I mean, McCall, you've come and gone is now my assumption.
Yeah.
Well, okay. And you're back now for Christmas?
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Jocelyn and I just got back. So I'd driven down to the ceremony. She flew down to visit her grandparents in Arizona. We road tripped for a couple weeks, and finally come back. And
I'm honored.
It feels really good to be here. Not red anymore.
Excellent. Final comments or any more update from you, Kate?
No, I mean, I can show you that my cat Miss Kitty has joined us. She'll be tuning in.
Oh, we'll take all the participants we can get.
What's your cat?
Yeah, she wants to learn.
Cat's name, please. We've had a request.
Yeah, what's your cat's name?
It is, I call her Miss Kitty, which is kind of silly, but I like it.
I think silliness is necessary for our animals. So
Yeah, she's precious.
there we go. All right. Okay, I'm gonna get going here. This is just one of my most fun lectures is Jainism, because Jainism is such an unknown, and that makes it normally a revelatory experience for anyone that encounters Jainism, and so that's fascinating for me. And yet, when you guys have both studied Gandhi, you realize the outcropping of Jainism and what Jainism accomplishes in the lives of people. And it takes a study in Gandhi to realize that. And so we're going to integrate that, but it's how important it is, because Gandhi was the key influencer of Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King Jr. Was such a shaping role in our current political life in America. You can still see his work in the most recent Black Lives Matter work. Yeah. That was a key outcropping of Martin Luther King's thinking and desire to have nonviolent protests that shape the country so that African Americans have a better life and existence for themselves and their families. And so that's the lineage that I tap into. And now I back up the train and say, but let's study the Jains and figure out how in the world they accomplished what they did into the life of Gandhi and then the life of Martin Luther King and our new story with Black Lives Matter, and that more community role to it. And so that's why I enjoy teaching about the Jains.
And refresh my memory on Gandhi's uptaking of Jainism.
It was the community he lived in was a Jain village. And so the dominant religion, there's approximately 3 million Jains at the last time I looked for a number in India. And so that's a sort of a region that they occupy. He was raised in that region. And so that's why it becomes not his religion, but his context.
Yeah.
And it gave him arrows in their quiver. Yeah. And I would argue every religion you study gives you a new arrow in your quiver that you can use when it's appropriate.
Totally.
And
was this prior to him going off to school?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. His upbringing was in a Jain village. And so that gives us that, and that's what makes his biography so intriguing, is he had this influence. Yeah. And now we can go back and say, what would it be like to be around a lot of Jains? What would that experience be like? Yeah. Because that was somehow part of it. Plus, and we'll see from, and as we're studying the Jains, it's important to sort of begin to recognize that he's doing Jain-like things. It isn't just Gandhi doing what Gandhi does. Totally. Gandhi is doing what Jains do. Yeah. And that's the intrigue of all of this when it comes to studying it.
I had identified him as a Hindu. And did he later identify as a Hindu when he came back from school?
He was always careful to identify with all religions, which is Hindu. I mean, that's a Hindu instinct. Mm-hmm. But he was a Cambridge-trained lawyer. So religion, I'm sure, was very intellectual to begin with. Yeah. And then he used the tools of religion to accomplish great goals. Mm-hmm. And that's where religion should become meaningful, but in our culture and community, it hasn't. And so again, by studying the religions, we're putting a capacity within you to say, if I wanted to accomplish something great, here's a pathway that I've gone to do it. But the key to but let me just go on to this. But the key to Jainism is really just let me see if I can make this work better. There we go. The key to Jainism is working on an immediate problem in a successful way. So if you were to sit down and so it sounds like Kate's immediate problem is a successful context to live her life. Would that be a fair sense of what you'd like to solve in the immediate future?
Yeah.
Okay, and so if you were to identify an immediate, reasonably important goal in your life, what would that be? So, and you can adjust that, Kate. If you have another goal you'd like to do, like build a business or do something else, but why don't you vocalize that right now? So what would be your next immediate, important goal that you can sense you should accomplish?
I need to get a job of some kind
Okay.
in the near future.
Okay, so employment is crucial. Yeah, paying the rent is really valuable, even if it's a trailer out beside a relative's house.
Yeah. I second that.
Okay, and so Ian wants a job too. Okay, so you're going up in the hill, aren't you? Aren't you one of our hill employees that whenever the season opens, you run up and do stuff like that?
I've not spent a winter here before.
Oh, so you're going to have a new experience of a McCall winter. But you've been in Lake Tahoe, so you're used to a heavy snow. Yeah, you're used to heavy snow winters. Okay, so jobs. Okay, so if the problem is you'd like to lose weight, you aren't doing enough exercise, you've got poor relationships, you don't have enough money, you can't get ahead, the simple answer is increase your discipline. Okay? Whatever you want to accomplish, you can't accomplish if you simply live the life you're living now, because your life is full. All adults have full lives. You're doing everything that you are enjoying. But if you increase your discipline, you increase something that allows you to accomplish more. But it takes an increase in discipline. For example, if you say, I think I'd like to fast. Yeah. Okay? And I'm doing, you can, he caught the drift here. As I increased his discipline in an area he was thoroughly enjoying his lunch. But if you increase your fasting time in your fasting in your life, you've just given yourself all the time that you normally use to acquire things to eat, to process the things that you're eating, and to deal with that. So I've instantly given you an hour by saying, I'm going to increase my discipline by fasting. Yeah. All of a sudden, and this is why fasting in the history of the religions is so important, because it gave women more time. Because they're usually the ones that are doing all the prep and development and creation of the food and manage the food and clean up. So much of that is the role of women. And so when fasting it becomes an important part, it gives you an hour to now go look for a job, because your life was full before that. How are you going to find an hour to go look for a job? It's tough because life is full. And so now it's giving you an hour because you're not eating. Does this sort of make sense? Mm-hmm. And so from the spiritual point of view, fasting has always been important because it gives people time back to do other things that are more important than eating. So fasting becomes a fascinating discipline for you to do that. And that's, again, why do you spend time meditating? Because you sense that your mind and your body is better at the end of a discipline period, which is all meditation is disciplining yourself to do something else, to accomplish something else.
Yeah.
So religion is designed to give you a new path of discipline so you can reshape your life. Now, Americans use the discipline of religion to build businesses. That was how they used their discipline. So the Puritans, when they arrived in America, used their incredible discipline of religion to say, if my business is successful, I'm a good Christian. And they made that as their equation of success spiritually. And that drove the whole business enterprise of the East Coast through the for a long time. In American life. It was the religious desire to live a pure life that created discipline. So now all of a sudden they weren't spending their money on booze. They weren't spending their money on bad relationships. They weren't spending their money on frivolity. They were spending their lives with discipline that comes out of their religious desires that creates a business output. So discipline is the key leverage to accomplishing the goals you want to accomplish in life. And you have to ask where you're going to get your discipline. That's the design of religion, is give you discipline. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so we come to now the religion of all religions when it comes to discipline, and that's Jainism. Jainism requires what I would argue is the greatest commitment to discipline of any religion you will encounter. And that's what makes Jainism so important, is it gives you the world's finest example of discipline. Now, you're going to look at it and you're going to laugh almost all the way through it, because the discipline is so extravagant that you can't imagine anybody can do it. But at the end of the day, you have to sort of step back and say, because of extraordinary discipline, all Jains can accomplish extraordinary things. And that's the equation I want you to capture in our study of Jainism. And so welcome to Jainism.
All right.
Comments on discipline, religion, discipline, and accomplishing life goals. That should be almost a new equation for you.
Yeah.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I just don't know. This is really the first contact I've had with Jainism a whole lot. I was reading the textbook earlier, and it just seems very extreme on all fronts.
and that I want you to be. So it's important that you have a reason on why you explore extremism.
Yeah, I mean the initiates pulling their hair out. That's a lot. That's a pretty far edge to reach.
Do they actually pull all the hair out?
We're going to talk about it. We're going to talk about it. And so it is part of your study on this religion. Okay, here we go. Before we get too far, and thank you. It sounds like, Kate, you were able to do your reading. So did that turn into an analysis?
Yes, I submitted it.
You've submitted? How are you doing, Ian, on the little projects that we do along?
Good. I have just a paragraph to write.
Okay, so your reading's done?
Reading's done, and
Okay.
I have...
Punch it in.
I have one paragraph written.
Okay. Next week, if I can do it in a timely way, I will have the Buddhism quiz available.
All right.
And you know what happened to my life last time when I tried to accomplish this goal. So I am going to try and accomplish the goal. You will know when I've succeeded. Don't worry about it, other than studying, obviously, until I actually send out an email and say it's up and running. So don't assume that my life will organize well enough that I'll get this goal accomplished, but it might, and I might even come in early, but it's probably, anyway, you guys have figured me out enough to know what's going on.
Are you going to fast to get it done?
Am I going to fast? Now there is the arrow in the quiver being shot well. Yes. It's proposing a religiously significant item to allow other people to accomplish their goals.
Yeah.
And it is the key to the shaman, to the pastor, to the priest. It is their key of spiritual development, is they improve the discipline of people so they can accomplish other goals. It's a perfect illustration. I'm embarrassed that I don't know if I don't think I'll be doing fasting to accomplish the goal. And you can use that when if things don't go well this week.
I trust that you'll be using another
Okay, so next week, my online quiz. We'll stop with the spiritual encouragement right now. And then the next week, I'd like for you to do your presentations. And so that would be that. Okay.
Yeah.
We have 2 weeks of Jane's. And then I'd like to go to presentation. And as the last thing we'll do today, we'll talk about the final exam, which is an essay. It's not an exam. It's an essay. I've introduced Kate to the idea, and we'll reiterate it at the last thing before we go home tonight.
Okay.
So hopefully it's very meaningful. I trust it is. Okay, and as we come back to the religions of India, let's sort of take the camera up to what we've been studying. And so I want to compare the Indian context to the American context. Have you gotten a sense yet of the cyclical thought as compared to American linear thought? Now that's an unacceptable bifurcation in some ways, but I just sort of like to use it as a way of saying, are you getting a sense of what cyclical thought might be like as compared to how most of us are trained, and that's to be very linear? Are you catching that?
Yeah, I don't often contrast it to our way of thinking, but when I read about it, it makes sense to me, the cyclical means of thinking, and I relate to it in the sense that I do believe in birth, death, and rebirth.
Sure.
So I guess I have integrated at least one aspect of cyclical thinking, and then there's seasons and so on and so forth.
Kate, how are you doing on that really dominant shift that you have to make for Indian thought?
I like it. I think that it's both are applicable, and it's contextual.
I think it's continue.
Go ahead. Oh, yeah, no, it's definitely sinking in. And again, reading the samsara liberation cycle, or samsara moksha cycle again in Jainism, it's just interesting how that is the cycle, and it makes sense. Both make sense.
For me, I often think about it, and it comes when I realize I'm thinking like an American that only has one life to live. And that contrasts with the many lives that I think is instinctive and just part of the thinking within Indian thought. And the unbelievable pressure we place on ourselves to get a lot done in one life. That pressure, I think, is minimized within Indian thought. And so at that point, it's hard to live both. You almost have to live one or the other when you're thinking about what I want to accomplish in this life, as opposed to what I'm setting up for the next life. That's a different way of living life practically. And I'm very much I'm living one life, and I sense that often. And so that's when I really, really, the rubber meets the road when how my mind is constructed and how I think about my spiritual life. In the Indian context, life is hard and filled with unmanageable suffering. I think that's minimizing as they enter into a middle class. I think that's adjusting and changing, and that good things are happening to an awful lot more Indians. Then, whereas I think from an American perspective, life is good and suffering is manageable. And so when you're studying Indian religions, I think it's important to realize that they are living a life that's really hard and they want to change. They want their children to have a much better life because their life is tough, if not horrible. And that motivates the religion and the spiritual journeys so that they can discipline themselves to accomplish something in the lives of their children. Whereas in the American context, we live a pretty good life. And you just try and pass that along. You pass on what you have to those that you can pass your ideas and thoughts and possibly life to them. And so that's again, a different kind of motivation to use the spiritual life. And it's also part of the reason why American religiosity is so watered down. There's no point to it. Why do you have an aggressive religion if the point of an aggressive religion is to change things and you're just fine with the way they are? So your religion turns into just sort of what Lynette calls sort of the cruise ship experience. You just sort of get on the cruise boat and you make sure everybody keeps you happy, and then you get off the cruise boat when you're done. And religion for many Americans is just that. You just get on the cruise ship and you expect someone to entertain you, and your discipline is only that you have to show up and sit in your seat and then go home again. And it's like a cruise ship mentality. You can't live like that when your context is horrible, people are dying and suffering all around you, and life is not leading to successful life goals. And so that's the difference within the religions of India as well. The caste system demands conformity even when it's been outlawed for 50 or 70 years. As compared to the American, everyone can break their place in society and become whoever they want to be. And becoming president doesn't seem to be quite as good a goal right now as it was before. So maybe I should come up with a different goal. But anyway, you understand what I'm saying. Hinduism versus Christianity. Family is the social safety net in the Indian context. And so you have to build your relationships of your family. Whereas Americans have allowed the government to take over the social safety net, and that's created a disconnection. There's no reason to build your family because your family isn't meaningful when it comes to your social safety net. Your pension, which comes from your businesses or comes from your government, those are important for your last days on life. Well, in virtually every second or third world nation, you can't live like that. You have to build your family. Your family have to recognize their responsibilities to you, and that becomes your social safety net into the future. And reading the Nez Perce documentary that I'm reading right now, the inversion when the white folks arrived was they were individualists and self-centered, as compared to the Native Americans, who were community-centered and were prepared to do things that would allow. The example I was watching was on the Trail of Tears as they were pushing all the tribes to Oklahoma. The elderly would purposefully give up their life so that their families could survive, and that kind of communal centeredness is different than what we are encouraging within the American context. What am I missing? What other differences have you come across between the Indian context and the American context? Everybody okay?
Yeah, I can't think of anything. That's pretty comprehensive.
Okay. Let's get back to Gandhi. And just, I use that picture of Gandhi because you'll see that picture a lot tonight. Even it's going to be different people in the picture. And when you look at the picture of Gandhi, what do you see?
He looks really skinny, and he's um, sitting in his accustomed position with his feet off to the side.
Okay.
And he is making thread.
He's making thread. Exactly. Why?
To make clothing out of.
Okay. Why was that his key social agenda? Why is this picture definitive of that? Do you remember something in his biography?
So they could wear homespun clothes, so they didn't support the British industry for clothing.
Right.
Kate got it bang on. So by reteaching the homespun native way of producing cloth, he could frustrate the British economic pressure for Indians to buy wool processed in Britain. And that was such a revolutionary idea. So going back again to his countenance, extremely slender. This was not the happy Buddha here. This is someone that's, and now why is his obvious fasting to accomplish this goal been successful? He's given himself more time to do things in life. Isn't that an interesting relationship when you begin to make that connection?
Yeah, I hadn't thought about fasting in that way. I felt it was more symbolic of releasing attachment to the physical world so that you can attain enlightenment.
Okay, so from a biological point, I mean, fasting is so good from a spiritual agenda at so many levels. So what's the biological level of fasting?
Like letting your body wither into nothing. You're dying. You're leaving the earth plate.
Sure, but along the way, fasting is terribly healthy in its earliest stages. Okay. It can become death-defying in its later stages. But in its early stages, it's terribly healthy to allow your body to rest. We've already talked about the social contribution. You're getting more time to do it. But there's a spiritual contribution as well. And that the fasting causes the trances that people experience.
It's like a state change.
It's a state change. As you don't have, we know from reduced sugar levels in your brain to any of the other elements that are missing from your physical body, creates a trance-like environment that people can then use spiritually. And so while peyote or ayahuasca might be used as a stimulant to a stimulation of the trance, you can also use fasts to do the same, to accomplish a very interesting trance environment as well. So it's got a spiritual capacity to it. And so there's so much going on when you see someone that has clearly been aggressively fasting and at so many levels. So Gandhi was the Indian activist, you're aware of this, leader of the Indian independence against Britain, employed nonviolent civil disobedience, led India to independence, inspired movements around the world. As a child, he was introduced to Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity. And I don't want to minimize that. As a child, his parents did that to him. And look what he accomplished. How did he accomplish it? Because he was introduced to Hinduism, Islam, and Christianity. And Jainism was strong in his region. Although he did not identify as a Jain, his actions and beliefs were very Jain. So if you were to take these four major religions and say, what would happen if we introduced a child to all of these religions? They have so many arrows in their quiver. If they want to accomplish something significant in their life, they have a lot of tools to accomplish it. What's the number one tool? The discipline to get it done. And his whole life was discipline. And you can easily trace back all of his actions to awareness of what discipline can accomplish. Okay, so if you take that memory of Gandhi and you look at a Jain, you instantly go, yeah, but this guy's eating a little better than Gandhi was. And so this is a classic picture of a Jain. And so, Kate, there's a couple things that we've already talked about. What's this picture teaching us about the Jains?
Well, he's not wearing a lot of clothing.
Okay, so
bare
clothing
minimum.
is going to be part of the conversation. Yep.
He has no hair on his
No
head.
hair. Yeah. So you wonder how he came to be hairless. Yeah. Anything else you're noticing? Ian, what are you seeing?
His posture.
Posture is what?
Cross-legged, sitting.
Okay, so we've got a count.
And not very strict looking. I mean, he could very well be bleeding.
Yeah.
But maybe it's symbolic as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Potentially.
Yeah. So, and this is a modern Jain. We're not looking at a historic picture. So a modern Jain, this is somebody used this as representative of a Jain. So what's a Jain? A Jain is we're going to follow the teachings and model of the Jains, which is the conqueror in the local dialect. Our most recent Jain is Mahavira, becomes the Jina, or the principal Jain for our age. So we have to begin to understand who Mahavira is to do that. And I guess I've spelled principal wrong. And so now it's telling me that. So just while I'm not allowing my mistakes to...
No, I think it's
is that wrong?
It's considering a grammar error, not a typo.
Oh, yeah, it is. Well, but it is a grammar.
Oh.
There we go. Got it. Thank you. Now I'm solved that. Sorry, I just had to do that. I can't say it. So what does that mean? Because what year did Mahavira live?
Like 500 BCE.
500 BCE. And he's the principal Jain for our age, which must mean we're into an intriguing calendar here. And so the calendar of the Jains is intriguing, to say the least. And so the universe as we know it is a vast structure subject to endless cycles of time. We now know we're in an Indian religion. They think cyclically. And for each cycle, you have a progressive half cycle and a regressive half cycle. And I took that picture in the corner and I sort of blew it up to sort of get a sense to it. And so we have a regressive, we have a regressive half cycle and a progressive half cycle. And you sort of have to, then the natural question is, where are we? And when you look at this, the assumption of the Jains is we're here.
At the bottom of...
Yeah, we're in the current period.
Digression.
So it was horrible. Oh, no, let me get this right. It was horrible and getting better, back down to horrible. Okay, so it's really bad from the Jain perspective right now. And so each of these eras has their own representation. But my sense of this is this current period began with Mahavira at 500 BCE. So when you look at their calendar, you're sort of going, whoa, there's some different thinking here on the calendar of time. Let me go back to that. And so the first Jain of this half cycle, taking that picture again back up here, the first Jain of this half cycle was Rishabha. He established civilization. Okay, now we're getting a sense of 10,000 BCE. What are we talking about? He taught the path. And there's the key code word for most religions of the journey that you'll be on within the journey. He lived for 600,000 years. Okay, we're into sort of the Methuselah kind of thinking. Anybody know how long Methuselah was supposed to have lived?
No.
Around 700 years. Where does that name come from? That comes from Hebrew literature. There was a period of time where everybody lived almost 1,000 years, and it's documented within Hebrew literature, and it's within the Genesis section of Hebrew literature. And everybody that is talked about in these verses seemed to have lived almost 1,000 years, and that was only broken when Abraham's story began. And then it seemed to be more normal that we could understand. But before that time, everybody documented in that lived an extraordinary length of time. And so there's something in the ancients that you can say something like this and go, okay, we don't know how to say okay well, because we can't think in those terms. But within the religious context, you see this all the time, of these extraordinary narratives of people living an extraordinary time. And you wonder how in the world they could say this and just maintain it in their spiritual story, but they do. So sorry about that. So, but catch it, there's 24 Jains per half cycle. So 24, and then when we break into the ascending half cycle, there'll be another 24. Okay? So the 23rd Jain is Parshva, which is the mid-9th century BCE, and he established the order of monks. Okay, we're just telling stories now. We're not trying to assess it for anything, but the 24th and the last Jain in this half cycle is who we're going to talk about tonight, Mahavira. Well, I hope you make you feel really small, because we're 2,500 years after Mahavira, but we're in this last half cycle. There's no more to come for thousands of years, which means in Jain thinking, this beginning of the ascendancy phase is not coming for thousands of years. Wow, this is a different way of thinking. It is just different. There again, we're in a Christian context. We have Christians that will argue that the earth began in 4000 BCE. They will live and die on that number. In fact, they'll say 4406 is when the earth started. And they'll live and die on that number, because what they've done is they've taken the Hebrew literature and taken all of these representations, and they've taken their understanding of a year, and they built their calendar back to 4406 BCE. And you look at a tradition like this and you go, wow, is that ever a mind-blowing way of thinking? And yet when we come to our scientific understanding, how old's the earth?
Millions and millions and millions.
Add a B to it.
Huh?
Add a B to it.
Oh, billions?
Billions and billions of years. Folks, they have this down. What we now can say from a scientific perspective is billions of years have been available to use. And your ancients had already captured it.
Wow.
They'd already captured it. Okay. So Jainism is really interesting because of that perception. Very strong cycle, but an extraordinarily long cycle is part of their way of thinking. So it's sort of a fun one to think. And even now, the Big Bang Theory is beginning to sort of think this way, that there was compression, 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 Big Bang, expansion, 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 and then it's going to get out a long ways, and it's going to start coming back again. And so there's some physicists that think this way, that these billions of years is actually what the Big Bang is. And that solves the problem. Where did the material come that caused the Big Bang? Did it come from nothing? So that they can solve that problem by saying it's a compression expansion phase from a physics point of view. So it's a fun way that physicists have solved the problem of creation out of nothing. Religious people have created it using God as their mechanism of creating something out of nothing. Physicists have also tried to mess with this same problem. Okay, and so now we've discovered Mahavira, and you may have already encountered it. So he's born in 599 BCE. Who else was in this time zone? I want to hear all the names. We've done this many times.
Mm-hmm.
Who would be born within 100 to 200 years of his birth? Who's a contemporary at around 600 BCE?
I go back to Confucius again.
Okay, Confucius. Yep. Yeah, he's going to be in the same time zone. Yeah. Who else?
The Buddha.
The Buddha. Okay. Now, what is Buddhism gonna reject?
The caste system?
Kate, I didn't hear it.
Is it the caste system?
Caste system, yes. Absolutely. What else is it going to reject?
Asceticism.
Asceticism. And what are we going to learn is the most aggressive form of asceticism in the religions of India? Jainism. So there's going to be a rejection, and whereas as the Buddha is going to get moderate in his religious orientation, Mahavira is going to push the envelope as far as it can be pushed. And both of them are going to be successful at making valuable religious contributions. And that's what makes it interesting. So born in 599, come on, let's get some more. The Buddha. Who else? Anybody want to do Taoism? Who's the founder of Taoism? Hazir? Lao Tzu. Okay, Confucius and Lao Tzu are also contemporaries, contemporary to Mahavira and the Buddha, who from Jewish, from ancient Hebrew. Anybody remember who the starter of Judaism is? It's not Moses.
Yeah, okay.
That's 1500 BCE. Ezra is considered the father of Judaism, contemporary to this, 500 BCE. Okay? So his mother dreamed about elephants and rising suns and jewels, and within the womb, she knew she had somebody special because he... Why was this pre-born infant so special? He did not kick his mother during her 9 months of gestation. Miss Kate, what do we call a baby that doesn't kick his mother during gestation?
I don't know.
No, we call it, is this baby alive?
Oh yeah, stillbirth.
Okay, that's kind of what I was thinking.
Okay. Is the because what do we use as the criteria of a healthy baby? Kicking its mother, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she's a normal mom at that level. The baby has never kicked. What's she thinking is coming down the pipe?
Yeah,
A stillborn.
Yeah.
What does she get? Mahavira. Okay. So that story now is part of this. Oh my goodness, I've got a live baby, and the story now carries with it to the point where it becomes the definition of someone who has the inherent virtue of nonviolence. You see how that story would be told through the life of Mahavira and by his mother and family, and become an essential part of the doctrine of nonviolence. You are so nonviolent, you don't even kick your mom when you're in gestation. Isn't that an interesting definition of nonviolence? Again, Hinduism is going to be nonviolent because they don't want to be killing their grandmother. So they have that as one of their motives. But here now, within the womb, we get this interesting virtue development. And we know kicking causes the twisting of the umbilical cord. Thank you. And so and we define the health of a baby as to a fully twisted umbilical cord when the baby is excised. His must have been as straight as a. I mean, so you just get all these anatomical interests that come out of the study of this. Again, born to royal parents. Who's that like?
Like Buddha.
Buddha, born to royal parents. Give me some more. And those that weren't. It's good habit for you just to go through all these people and reawaken your story. Born to royal parents. Who else? Buddha is born to royal parents. Who else of our founders are royals?
I don't know.
Okay. Give me any names you can think of that we've already talked about.
Okay, Ezra.
Okay, Ezra was not born to royal. He was a leading priest. He was from priestly family.
Okay.
Give me some more names.
Jesus.
Pardon? Kate?
Jesus.
Jesus.
I don't think he was born to royal parents, though.
Was he or wasn't he?
I don't think he was, but I don't actually know.
Okay. Jesus was born to royal parents. Both his mother and his father were in the house of David. David is the preeminent royal to the Jewish nation. And both Mary and Joseph both trace their lineage back to David. Okay, so yes, Jesus was born of royal parents, even though his story is he was born into the house of a carpenter and would seem to be a barefoot and pregnant wife. And so you get this poverty story that comes out of the Jesus narrative, when in reality, the story is trying to tell you that this is a prince. Jesus is born into a royal family. For the same reasons we're seeing it here. There's something unique about these individuals, so they matter if you come from a royal family. Jesus, yes. Give me some more names.
Lao Tzu.
Lao Tzu, we don't know much about Lao Tzu.
Okay.
It's one of those we're not sure. More?
Confucius.
Confucius was a bureaucrat, so he had regular parents in the knowledge, middle class. More?
Moses.
Moses was born to slaves who then put him in a basket. He was found by the royal family and raised as a royal, and had to leave because of a fight he had with his royal brother, one of the eventual pharaohs of Egypt. So in a way, Moses was adopted, and the story is very clear that he was adopted into a royal family. Isn't it interesting?
Yeah.
How you can sort of enjoy these various religions just from that perspective.
Who's the founding Hindu?
We don't use one.
Yeah, that's right.
We don't use one. And we recognize that Krishna has as much historical historical background as we're going to get, but they purposely don't use a founder within Hinduism. I think it's part of the the reality that Hinduism is a British construct onto the religions of India. And if you sort of broke it up into its smaller sections, you might, I mean, you look at, it doesn't absorb the idea of a founder well within Hinduism. And so it's intriguing that way. So pushing on, Mahavira was married and had a daughter. Okay, give me a comparison. Anybody you can think of. Who else was married? Who else had children? Pick a name.
I don't know this one.
Pick a name, man, and we'll develop it.
Jesus.
Jesus, was he married? Answer to that is no,
No.
not from the tradition.
Okay.
They mess with that and say Mary Magdalene might have been, might have been, but formally, no. Did he have any children? No. Okay, throw another name out.
Okay.
The Buddha.
Ezra, we don't know what his married status was. The Buddha. What's happening there? Was he married?
I don't know.
Yes. Did he have children?
Yeah.
Yes, a son.
Oh.
Yeah. So the Buddha is really, again, a contemporary, coming from a royal family, was married, had a son, and did what to his family? Left them. What's Mahavira going to do? Leave them. Okay? And so we think Confucius had a family. We don't know much. Lao Tzu, we don't know. So those are all lots of interesting. Moses, yes, had a family. Can't think. I'd have to rethink if he had children. At 30, the gods appeared, made the great renunciation. Let's stop at 30. Why is 30 important?
Well, it's considered a prime age now.
Okay.
And that was about the life expectancy back then.
So the average, usually a little further into their 40s, typically.
Okay.
So if you're going to die in your 40s, what are you at 30?
An elder?
You're an elder.
Yeah.
Yeah, it gives you that elder status.
Yeah, and you're just coming out of your Saturn return.
For the ancients, they didn't think anybody should be listened to until they hit their 30th birthday. It was just an age of eldership that was everywhere else. How old was Jesus when he started his ministry?
30.
30. Why? Because nobody listened to you before you were 30. So we can go through. I'm not sure of the Buddha, but the Buddha would be terribly close to 30, I would think. I think we could go, again, Muhammad, very close to 30. And Muhammad was married and did all, we could go through Muhammad's life too. It's interesting. So 30 is important. It's a pivotal date when all the religions tend to say our founder is now meaningful into their life. Lord, awake, reverent Lord of the world, establish the teachings of the Holy Path, the Dharma Titra, for the sake of every living being in the entire universe. It will bring benefit to all. Do we need to take a break? Good, take a break. I just realized this might be the best time.
Yeah.
Okay, let's take a fiber, and we'll come back to the great renunciation, which is walking away from your married life. But they all do it. And so, let me turn this on.